Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's 2022. I hope everyone celebrated safely and you're having a healthy and happy new year. Uh, this channel is the 7-5 for those of you just tuning in for the first time. It's about corrupt cops across the country, and it's more or less the stories that you're not going to hear about that are very quiet, don't make the big news headlines like George Floyd and other cases. So that's what I'll share with you. And also there's a Q&A section at the end about the 7-5 documentary and my career in police work and corruption. So we're going to get into that. Please, if you're new to the channel, hit this thumbs up button and the notification bell. You'll know when there's a new video coming out. All right, so first story. It's, again, here in Florida. How many stories come up in Florida? Cops down here. I don't know. This isn't so much a corruption thing, but it was more procedural and doing things outside the lines within the department. This officer is actually a sergeant when this happened. He's been on the job since 2007. His name is James McDowell, Fort Lauderdale. And he got charged with 3 counts of grand theft and 1 count of scheming to defraud. So what he did basically, it's sort of double dipping, and what that is, like a lot of guys in up in New York, once they retired, you're not allowed to take another city job and get a second pension within the city. You could go take another job in private sector with no problem, but you can't take another city job and work for a second pension, sort of called double dipping. But what Sergeant McDowell did was he was working off duty, some off duty job. Didn't say what type of job. I'm assuming it's some type of security job, or a lot of cops down here, they work for funeral homes and do funeral processions where they block traffic to make sure the hearse and the family members all get through the intersection safely until they get to the cemetery. But he was doing it while he was on duty. So he was getting paid for his on-duty job as a sergeant for the city of Fort Lauderdale, and he was working at the same time his off-duty job, whatever that may have been. Again, they didn't say what that was. So he's probably definitely going to lose his job, and he's facing criminal charges for defrauding the department, probably for fraudulent hours or something like that. I'm sure they'll hit him for back pay and things like that. So that was our first story. Second story is a little more intense. This officer was on the job since 2009. It's a Houston officer. His name was Ray Irvin, 41 years old. I believe it says it is 2 different versions of this. It says he was an ex or former officer, and another story says he was an officer when this happened. So maybe I'm thinking he was an officer when it happened, but they didn't charge him for a couple of weeks. So maybe he got suspended immediately, and then he was arrested and hit with these charges, which makes one story say he was a former officer. So what happened was, he has a child with an ex-girlfriend. They broke up. He went to her apartment, kicked in the door, broke in the door. They hit him with burglary. While in there, now again, 2 versions. One version says he beat her with his gun. Another version says he punched her in the face and then put his gun to her head. So I mean, it's close, but a little off on the versions on the 2 stories I looked at, on the 2 versions of the story that I looked into. He got obviously charged with burglary and something else. It was an assault charge, some type of an assault charge, probably an assault with a deadly weapon. He also took the baby from his ex-girlfriend and fled the scene with the baby. And then there's another whole thing about him not having a car seat. in the car that he fled with. So I don't know. They might upgrade the charges to unlawful. I don't think you could get unlawful imprisonment with your own biological child unless she had full custody. Then maybe they'll hit him with that or some type of kidnapping charge. I don't know. But he hasn't been charged with that yet. So that's the two stories with that. We'll see where it goes. Usually, I can't do follow-ups because I can never find the follow-up on these stories when there's an outcome. So I do look, and if I find them, follow, because usually they're obviously months later, sometimes years later, when there's a disposition on these cases. So we'll see what happens with that. Q&A, making these things quick too for you. Q&A was obviously everyone wants to know movie updates. What can I say about movie updates? Pretty much the same since the last time I updated you. There's nothing new. My contract was extended a few months back. Don't know if my partner's contract was extended. We're not speaking. From what I've heard from the intermediates that talked to my partner and myself, he did sign a contract, and he's moving forward also. It's slow going. The last I heard was another screenwriter that came on with Ben Stiller, and they're rewriting the script again or updating it from the last version. So see what happens with that. The big Q&A, well, not big Q&A, but the other Q&A, which is different from the one that I get asked all the time about movie updates, is was Chicky and Walter ever arrested for the crimes that my partner and myself were involved in? Short answer is no. Long answer is yes, and I'll give you the long answer. They were not arrested for what my partner and myself were doing, for working with Diaz and working with La Compañía, all that. They didn't get arrested for that. They didn't get arrested for any of the drug dealing my partner and I did on Long Island. They were arrested a few years earlier, and I believe I know I spoke about it in my book, Betrayal in Blue. Pick it up if you haven't yet. I'm pretty sure I spoke about it maybe briefly before in one of the videos. I'm not sure, but the question was asked again, so I'm going to go through it again. Much like we explained in the 7-5 documentary, we were doing robberies of drug dealers and things like that. Chicky Walter, and there was a third cop. I'm not going to give his name because he didn't participate in the documentary, although my partner did name him in the Mullen Commission. They were doing robberies, same type of thing, drug dealers, robbing drug dealers. And this particular one where they were arrested, Walter was still on the job. He was in the 7-5, and I was on the job. My partner was gone. Dowd was gone. He went off to the farm, and then from the farm, he went to the Whitestone Pound. So Walter was doing a midnight, getting off the midnight, and I was doing a day tour. So he knew I wasn't really making any money anymore because my partner was gone. And they asked me, "We're doing a hit tonight. You want to come along on it?" And thankfully, I said no. I was trying to just go back into a regular, ordinary cop routine, although we all know how that turned out. So that night, Walter, Chicky, and this third cop came back to do a robbery of, and I'm got people that are familiar with our story and my book know the R&T grocery store robbery. So they had robbed this place once before. It was a bodega, and he was selling cocaine out of it and fireworks and other things, other illegal items. So they had robbed the place once before. They were being given information by this guy named Jamie, who was the son of a very close friend of ours who owned a bodega on Blake Avenue. So they go in to do a fake raid on the place as undercover cops, and in the process, they're really robbing the joint. So they did it once, robbed the place, got away with it. They went back the second time after I was invited along, and along with robbing a place of cash and cocaine and fireworks. I'm not sure why, and maybe if Walter, Chicky's never online, he doesn't participate in this type of stuff. Walter's online on his own thing. Maybe he'll explain why they did this part. They grabbed the proprietor of the store, the guy who was working behind the counter, and took him in Walter's car and basically kidnapped him and held him to the floor of the car with a gun. Now, I'm assuming they were driving him around to find another drug location, maybe his supplier or something like that. There's different versions from the newspapers that came out about they were. I highly doubt they were going to execute the guy. There was a version in one of the newspapers that they were going to execute the guy, but they saw a patrol car and they decided not to do it, and they let the guy go. Okay, this was all happening during the 4x12 tour, but they're off duty, and Walter had to come back to work for the midnight tour. So they went to, I believe, Bailey's, split up the proceeds, and Walter had his proceeds in the trunk of his car. At midnight, he goes to the 7-5 precinct to go to work. In the midterm, the guy they grabbed from the store, I don't know if he was the owner or just the guy behind the counter, I believe he was the owner, went to the precinct to report this because he was tired of being robbed by people pretending he thought that they were cops. He thought they were just, people that go around robbing drug dealers. He didn't realize there were actual cops involved. So he goes to the precinct to report this. And while he's reporting it, Walter, who is a very prominent, looking person, he's very tall and red hair at the time. So he's easily picked out and identified. Walter walks into work, and the victim, he's a victim, even though he was a drug dealer. There's the guy that robbed me. So detectives grab Walter, they call internal affairs. Internal affairs come down. They, the guys identifies Walter, and they go out to the lot. They pop Walter's trunk. In the trunk is a stolen police radio, drugs, fireworks, some cash, I don't know how much, from the robbery. And Walter that night is arrested for robbery and kidnapping. Eventually, maybe a month, 2 months later, Chicky got arrested for it. The papers speculated that my ex-partner was the ringleader, the kingpin of that. He wasn't. That's bullshit. That's just speculation they put out. My ex-partner had nothing to do with these things. Obviously, we had a crew where we did things together, but it had nothing to do with those particular robbers. It was only these 3 cops. So Chicky was arrested a little while later, and the 3rd cop was arrested like another month after that. I think Walter ended up doing 1.5 years or 2 years. I believe is upstate New York somewhere, Oneonta. I think that's where it was. I'm sure Walter could correct it if I'm wrong on that. Chicky, I think, ended up getting 6 months, and the 3rd cop only got probation. He didn't get any time. So that all this was a couple of years before my partner and I were arrested in '92. Chicky was never arrested for anything that we did up until '92. None of the crimes that we did with Diaz, Chicky wasn't arrested for none of that. Walter now when we were arrested in '92, I was in Riverhead, Suffolk County Jail up in Riverhead. And my ex-partner was there, and a couple of 7-3 cops were there, and my ex-partner's current partner from the 9-4 was there. I hadn't seen Walter in probably 1 year, maybe longer, because he was obviously off the job from being arrested from the R&T grocery store robbery. So while we're in Riverhead, we're walking amongst the tiers, and I'm walking in one direction. All of a sudden, he goes Walter walking in the other direction, and I'm looking. I'm like, "Why the fuck is Walter here?" I had really had no idea. I knew he really had nothing to do with myself and my partner with all the Diaz stuff. He really never participated in any of that. I know he was doing a drug dealing and some things like that out on Suffolk County after he got out. So I was really sort of clueless about why he was there. And story came out in a newspaper later. I think he got caught on Dowd's wiretap. So, because I believe he was living with either my ex-partner or my ex-partner's brother at the time out in Brentwood. So I think he got caught on the wiretap talking about he burglarized a home out in Suffolk County. So he was arrested for burglary, which had absolutely nothing to do with what we were doing at the time. So I don't know what happened with that. He might have served some more time, some brief time, or he might have ended up getting probation. I really don't know what happened, but it was odd. We went walking by each other in opposite directions, and I was clueless. I was like, why is Walter here? Walter had nothing to do with what we were doing. He wasn't brought in the same night. There was like 50 people arrested the night that my partner and I got arrested, and the 7-3 cops got arrested. All the civilians that were involved in the drug dealing scheme, a couple of the dealers that were working for us, and a lot of people that were just casual users of cocaine that got caught on the wiretap were arrested. That's why it was like 50 people arrested. But Walter was never there that night in processing, so I had no idea, about him being arrested or why he was arrested. And I had found out later. So that's it. Those guys, none of them got arrested. Anything to do with what myself and my ex-partner did. So hopefully that answers the question. Did Chicky and Walter get arrested for what my partner and I were doing? No, they did not. Long answer, they did get arrested for other crimes. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching the show. Hit that thumbs up button, share this on your social media, and hit the notification bell. You'll know when my next video is coming out. Thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate it.